All right, we'll get underway. It's Tuesday, the July 18th Planning Board meeting. I have 7:02 p.m. Uh, Sue, did you get a chance to find out of how much I have to read about this addendum on remote participation? Do we still need to do this? So
You're
you're muted.
Oh, I don't know if you still need to read it. I know that the language on the website is vastly reduced. It simply says that you're meeting remotely as allowed by state law.
Well, then I think that
in the
statement
interest
is
of time.
certainly sufficient for me. Oh, okay. So the first item on our agenda is the Deer Run development update with Michael Crow, and I think he is in attendance.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Yes.
How are you?
Great.
Hello, Mike.
I had some technical issues, so I'm on my wife's computer. So it's
No problem. Thank
but
you.
it appears to be working. So good. So we all set?
Yes. Oh yeah. No,
Okay.
You have the floor.
So I had met with the planner a few weeks ago and we discussed it because I had not met her previously. I had no real reason to have many communications over the last 6 or 8 months, but I met with her, had a good conversation, and I had requested that just to get ahead of the ball so that I wasn't scrambling to try to do something in the next few months, that I have a chance to talk with the board about how I'm going to move forward, or how I can move forward as far as potential sales of units. But just before that, quickly, I assume you've all, because everybody drives by, you've seen that the road has had the drainage swales, there's been grass planted. It seems to be the only good thing about this nasty weather is it's helped me grow grass.
Yes.
But so it's coming along nicely. The significant rain, the good news is on top of that is these significant rains we've been having have been handled extremely well by the street, the system, the drainage swales. There's been no erosion of any kind, and everything, which is the good news, is that was designed to work seems to be working, and it's been tested. So I feel pretty good about all of that. As far as what I've done in there, which you can see from the street, the duplex on the right is up. It's nearing completion. I've done all the driveway. The septic is in. Everything site-wise is done on that lot, and it's, again, growing grass and stabilizing nicely. I have gutted the existing home and have got plans ready to start getting a permit for building the second unit with that. All the windows for that old unit they've actually come in. So that will very soon look more like a new structure than it does an old structure in the next 30 days. I have put the first 2 units on the market, and the reason for wanting to discuss it is what needs to be done for me to be able to close. As you remember, 6 of my units, which were intended to be the 6 new ones, are under a 4% fee for the affordable housing funds, which my anticipation would be is that prior to me getting my occupancy, I would be writing a check to whomever. I'm not sure but I'm sure either you guys or the planner can tell me where that goes, which would complete the obligation from that end of it. When this project was approved, there was no bond established because we had I don't know if any of you remember that were on the board, had a fairly good discussion about, or I proposed that not putting one on because the road is not that complex and I was going to be doing so much work, and I can't sell a unit without the affordable housing piece being addressed as well. So you guys controlled me getting any kind of an occupancy permit. It's my hope, given that there isn't a ton of work left to do on the roads, a few street trees, and a final paving, that we could, at least for the first 2 units, proceed under the same basis, and that I can get, with the payment to the housing fund, I can get a CO for these first 2 units. And my thought was that as we get into units 3 and 4, which are the older house, that if the discussion comes forward that because I will not be paying that 4% affordable fee on those, that at that time I make some amount contributed into a bond fund or a cash fund to cover any potential risk of if something happened and the road wasn't finished. But that was my thoughts. I just want to bring it up and have a little discussion on it and get your feedback.
Good, thank you. Good update. Any initial thoughts from board members?
I wondered about the status of Meridian's inspections out there to sort of confirm that we are where we need to be. Sue, I know you sent us some things, but yeah, sorry, Mr. Crowe, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I have communicated with Meridian on several occasions through the spring. He has taken a couple of site visits just to check one status, after the winter to see what the project looked like. He was happy. He had no suggestions or recommendations. He was notified when the trenches, the drainage trenches and swales, he inspected during construction that those went in, and he is satisfied that those were done properly. And as far as I know, there was nothing he was looking for at this moment or, for him to do really, because a lot of the rest of the work or some of it is under the Conscom purview. As far as like some of the plantings. I also met with Conscom out there and she was pretty happy with the way things looked. And we came up with a timeline with me getting the grass in, and then we're a little concerned about putting some of the plantings in the drainage swale areas, the wetland areas. And we're thinking I'd be doing it more towards the end of August, just because it'd have a better chance of success if we had dry weather. But I mean, obviously you guys can confirm with Meridian as well about their status about moving forward, so.
May I weigh in here?
Sure.
Thank you. Hi, Mike, Deb Hamilton.
Hi, Deb.
Nice to see you again.
Yes.
I have many questions that have to do with aspects that you haven't touched on yet. First of all, when you say the roadway is essentially finished for units 5, 6, 7, and 8, there are going to be long driveways that extend off the back of the circle. Is that correct?
Just one driveway.
One driveway, and
Will feed the one duplex out back.
there's only one duplex. There's just a total of 6 units, 2 in the
No,
old building.
there's 8, but the other 2 are on the left of the road, but before the circle.
So that is going to be across from units 1 and 2, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. But and how will they be numbered? Which is 5, 6, and which is 7?
The ones on the right that I'm working on are 1 and 3.
Oh, 1 and 3.
The existing house is 5. The one attached to that will be 7. And then across the street from 1 and 3 is 2, 4, and 6 and 8 are out in the back. Because they do left, right, alternating numbers, the odds on one
Sure.
side, the evens on the other.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for that. I wear a number of hats in town, Mike.
I know that.
And one of them is ECTA.
Yes.
Essex County Trail Association. And you were kind enough to walk the property with us. And we, at the time, went down to a corner that seemed like whether we ended up crossing the Hamilton property or the Austin property to get to town-owned land. Your trail easement sort of goes to a corner that it could cross into both, as I recall. Is that right?
Correct.
So you know that the town and Greenbelt have the Austin property under agreement.
I have heard that, which I believe is very good news.
I believe me, I do too. And things are moving along, and you've got the detention basins in, but I have, I hope you don't mind, but I contacted Melanie Cosgrove and said, that the conservation agent and Carol Lloyd and I and you and Melanie would be a good contingent to walk down to see where the trail is actually going to go and to what extent are you prepared to finish it. ECTA holds the trail easement, and I presume we'll be working closely with Greenbelt to develop trails on the Austin property. But it's time that we, figured out exactly where those crossings are going to be and what your expectation is and ours.
Okay. So do you want you to share what my thought was, is how
Yes.
it was supposed to go?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
when we did all of this and did the walks, the trails that are existing are, for the most part, the trails that are on the easement. And my thought and plan when I first worked with ECTA was that I wasn't going to be needing to do any trail building per se, because they
Right.
were already built, and that the two easement crossings, which I identified the one to the left where it comes out to that corner,
Yes.
goes off of my property. And then there's a stream crossing, which is very short,
Yes.
as would be the most ideal place, but that's not all off of my land.
I understand that.
So
And
I wasn't anticipating doing anything other than,
getting to the,
and ECTA said they would take, at least the words I got was they would take care of the trails and they would do what they needed to do.
I'm prepared to say that's true.
Okay.
What I'm a little confused about is going down the slope from the roadway, there's a detention basin. And I don't know exactly where the trail goes to get down to that corner.
Yeah, no, it's where the driveways are going into the two, because there's two driveways at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
Goes to the existing house, and then the one directly next to it goes to the unit out back. The
Yep.
trail will come out right next to that driveway at the top of the hill, at the top of the banking to the drainage pond. So the drainage pond that's on that left is not
Yes.
impacted, nor does it impact the trail.
the
Because
trail is beyond it.
it'll skirt along the edge of the driveway going out to that back unit. So I think it's a fairly seamless process. Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
So when you look at the cul-de-sac and the lot in the middle, which has the house on it, and then there's that strip that goes, the narrow strip, the easement is right along the edge and then heads down into the field. You can, right there, yes.
This
that-
doesn't show the trail that goes east though.
I'm sorry, it doesn't show which trail?
Oh, okay. No, I'm okay. I got it. Okay.
There it is, right? Whoever's moving that has it.
Okay. Stop right a little further, Sue. Okay. So that little link that angles back northwest there. Yep.
That's the one that we suggested would be the easiest place to take the town trail in.
Yep.
Cross the stream, which is only about 8 feet wide.
Yep.
And go across and go up the hill into the town, the rest of the town property.
Yep. And so if you move that trail, that marker north, there's a little dotted line there. It says Sawmill Brook. I just wanted to point that out to people. Go right there. Okay. So to the right, that area is pretty much an expansive wetland. But as Mike has just told you, the actual stream forms pretty much at the lot line, and then it's very confined. And it'll be fun to build a bridge there. And I can't wait to see this trail network there.
You better let me know about building bridges.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. It's Ray, yes.
Ray Department. Well, ECTA does a pretty good job, but Bob Weatherall, who built the Indian River Bridge, the upper Indian River Bridge, and the boardwalks and the boardwalk off Coffin, is not, I think according to Carol Lloyd, he's no longer our main bridge guy. So we'll cross that, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
So whoever you had build all the ones in Ipswich, Topsfield, at Willowdale and all those, I've ridden my bikes extensively through those. They're amazing bridges out there.
That's an ECTA those are all ECTA projects for the
Yes.
most. Yeah, we work in Bradley Palmer and Willowdale
Yep.
and all those towns. Are you okay with this site walk that I'd like to take and show Melanie where that's going to be? And I don't think that our conservation agent has walked down there. And they called me and asked if I'd go with her on a site walk.
I thought I actually, the last time when I met her this spring, I thought we had, I can't remember how far we went. I thought we did some walking out around in the back, but.
Well, I'd like to take
Maybe
her
not.
down to that stream crossing for,
Yep.
as part of,
Anytime, let me know, and if I'm available, I'll be happy to join you.
great.
So Melanie Cosgrove, what is her, oh, okay.
She's your listing agent.
No, I realize, and I'm thinking, but I had walked some of it with her as well, so, okay.
I just
Yep.
don't want this to get anything wrong. Having
Yep.
sold houses for 40 years, I know an awful lot of my compatriots in the business would misrepresent trail easements. And to me, they're a huge asset to a property. But people need to recognize that it is a public permanent trail easement.
Yep.
And that can't be swept under a rug. And we have lost trails in all the towns that ECTA serves over the years because somebody upon the sale from the developer to the ultimate owner didn't get the communication right. And we've got two lawsuits pending in West Newbury. I mean, one that has been found in our favor and the other we haven't fought yet. But and then there's John Cena's house, but we won't go there.
Well, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure nobody is misled as far as anything I'm doing in terms of selling, because it's
Great.
very much in the forefront that there are trail easements and tying into the town property, which is,
Yes.
I believe, a plus for me.
All right. Final question. When do you anticipate that we might be able to use these trails? Let's assume that we spend the next year buying the Austin property. I'm on the fundraising committee, everybody. I'm hopeful that there will be lots of support from the planning board to minimize the town's impact. And we're applying for grants too, but that is yet to come. But in the meantime, any timeline?
So the property, the last one I'm going to build out will be the unit behind the existing house. And it doesn't directly, if I'm doing that because of the driveway, it doesn't directly impact anything with the trails.
Great.
If things go as I hope, I will be putting in the fourth unit on the house in the next couple of months. I'll be putting a foundation in. And further to that, because I'm not under a buffer zone on the lot on the left, so numbers 2 and 4, I will plan on putting that foundation in the late fall, so that I can, like I did in the first one, I can be building it through the winter, and then come spring would probably be putting that septic system in on that unit, which is the one that's way out back. So I will be having some amount of equipment down and back of that into the back hill. But I don't believe that should have a great impact, but to be safe, probably next summer that would be all tidied up and ready to open that up. And I don't know if that impacts your timeline negatively at all, or whether that.
I've learned that sometimes this type of project, it takes years. Oh, you've already been at this 3 years, so you're a patient man.
I didn't have much choice.
Okay. Thanks.
But you don't know, the town doesn't even own that property yet, is that correct?
No, we have it. I think it's under, well, I know it's under agreement, and town meeting voted $350,000 toward its purchase. And the rest, and that was from CPA funds primarily, but there's fundraising yet to come. I was
The
just.
likely is that if it's next summer that I've kind of built that unit and done it, it's probably not holding anything up in terms of what you guys are going to do out there anyway, probably.
No, I mean,
Just
all of us
say-
horse gals who have ridden these trails for 40 years are getting up there. But there are going to be lots of people who are going to be enjoying these trails and for decades to come. So I'm delighted that you're as accommodating as you are and that we'll have them eventually. Thank you.
Yeah, I might add that, Deb, just typically in the past, the developer certainly has some liability concerns with, public access. And we've been through this on a number of other projects where, there's a desire to use the trails, but there's equipment, there's, machines, there's people, etc. So I think a year is probably at a minimum, and it frankly could be a little bit longer than that.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other board member comments before I give you my thoughts on Mr. Crow's request?
So much a comment. Brian, this is Tim Cronin. Sue, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the notes from Meridian, but there was an as-built plan that was referenced, and Mr. Crow may be familiar with what they're looking for. I think it was for the drainage system. Is this ringing a bell?
Yes, I saw that too.
Yes, so there's still an outstanding, because he wasn't there to view the installation of part of the system. He is looking for an as-built on that portion. I can share that in just a second.
I'm aware of that. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yes. And we've addressed it. And I'm not sure that it's been fully resolved. I mean, it's been addressed, but I'm not sure that he's gotten every piece of paper to document it fully. But I know that my engineers have done the work and done the calculations to meet his concerns. And so it's possible that they just haven't put the final paperwork that would, allow him to say that's right. And I'll get right on that and make sure that that happens. Because there was also my concern that as I start growing and these things are established, that they in fact meet the plan design. So I've been assured by my engineer that they do. So, and so have your engineers, but I don't know that the paperwork was fully there to document that, but that
Okay.
will happen.
Great. I think that was the only thing that I observed, Brian, on the
Yep.
report.
Okay. Ray, do you have any thoughts you want to share? Or
No, I'm comfortable with things here.
yeah, basically that's my take. I mean, I think at this juncture you're looking for just release on those 2 units to move forward. We can work out the payment on the affordable housing component. For me, I wouldn't have any hesitation because there are other units coming down along, and so I think that's my thought. And if anybody else wants to weigh in, or no, okay. So Sue, should you and I get together, or we can work out the payment and make sure it meets with Mr. Crow's expectations?
Sure. I can do that paperwork and get the Form J. I think it's a Form J ready for that release. And then I think it takes obviously a vote of the board to do that. A majority vote of the board to do that.
Okay.
And
Should
then
we
pass that on.
get that paperwork so we're ready to sign it, and then vote at the early August meeting? I don't know where you are with any urgency, Mr. Crow.
No, that's fine. That's why I wanted to come to this meeting, because in case something happens, the urgency would be in August to early September, and I didn't want to be scrambling in August to have this first discussion. So,
Yep. No. Very, very good.
so there will be no need for anything prior to the August meeting. So that makes it convenient. Yes. And as far as the payment, until I have a purchase and sales agreement, obviously the amount's not going to be known.
Right. But yeah, I think we should, I think we've hashed out any issues. We can do a formal vote and whatnot, and, you know, we can work out what the payment, you know, could be. I know what you're looking for. We saw the listing, but, yeah, so we'll put it on the first meeting, which is, I don't know how the date is here.
August 1st.
Oh, it is August 1st. I knew it was early.
And then August 15th is the second.
Yeah, let's do it on August 1st. Okay. That all, you all set with that? Whoops,
Yes.
Yeah,
Deb?
I just wondered if you wanted a motion now to put it in motion, or do you want to
I
wait?
think we should just wait.
Okay,
We'll just wait.
okay.
We'll also just double back with Meridian and whatnot. But I know you're working that out. I'm not saying we would hold that up because you have the other units, but let's keep moving forward with what they're looking for, and I think
I
that'll be fine.
will hopefully be able to have Chris Sparagus have in Meridian's hand the as-built prior to that August 1st.
That'll be fine. Sure. Okay.
Can't
Good, we
promise because I
appreciate
don't know if people are away or whatever, but
Well, you do run into that, and if people are away, hopefully they have decent weather. So,
no, we have to take a long trip.
I don't know where to go.
I know. Okay, so we're all good for now, sir?
Yes.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good to see you again. Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, good. Let's move on. Let's see, the Housing Opportunities Initiative. We've update next steps, and I think we have Mr. Flinker here tonight to give us an update. Sue, do you want to provide any information first?
No, I'd just like to thank Peter for coming. This wasn't in the original scope to have him come, but that's the great thing about Zoom is that he can do that. But I think it's great that he's there because what we were going to discuss is issues that could help him in their next steps of creating concept plans. So I think if he can ask the questions and the answers can come directly from you to him, that's a benefit. So I thank you.
Yeah, I think we
you
had
for
planned
coming.
to just have a free-flowing meeting and discussion on our thoughts, but Peter, you can have the floor, and I think we'll probably cover exactly what you need.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, it is. We're kind of at this moment where it's a little hard to say exactly where we're going. So I think the next steps for us are really to select the sites that we're going to test, if not choose for the final district. And so what I'm hoping tonight is that you can give me some of your input about which sites you think are worth moving forward with and sort of a general approach to selecting a district. And then what we want to do is come back to your next meeting in August, I think on August 15th, with some basically illustrative plans for those sites at various densities and so on to help understand what might actually come of this. So I'm going to share my screen and sort of quickly give you an update of where we are. If I can find, here we are. The problem with your having somebody else on the agenda is I started 3 other projects while I was listening. Too many windows open.
Yeah.
So as you know, we did public forums on June 20th and 27th and sort of try to sort of do our due diligence of, where is the best place to have this district and to help explain why, and also kind of empower you and other people who have participated in the process and being able to explain how this happened, especially when we come to town meeting. So of course, we've gone through this process of looking at the physical and regulatory constraints across the town, looking at what's already developed, what's already protected, what's owned by the town. And we have this sort of yellow map of where are the largest parcels that are potentially developable. And then all of that sort of led us to the conclusion, logically, that the large parcels along Main Street, especially in close conjunction with the traditional downtown, probably make the most sense to look at for one of these districts. And then, as you know, for the design workshop, we sort of brought large base maps of the Mullen and the Dunn and the Knapp greenhouse property and asked people to sort of look at how development might fit on those sites using little model pieces. So we have the Mullen property, which you're very familiar with, 34 acres, probably about, the upper part of that is really the most developable. So it's very comparable in size to the two other properties in terms of developable area, probably. So there's the Knapp property at 19 acres. Again, the back of that is wetlands. And then the Dunn property, which at 15 acres maybe is the most easily developable. It's got existing access off of Main Street, some existing buildings, and some very interesting possibilities there. Including what was raised at the workshop is, should we just look at this one parcel, or should we perhaps include some of the neighboring parcels and maybe connect over to the new development on to the east of the property?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yes.
No. You go ahead. I was just going to say, absolutely, I definitely wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
Me too.
So I think as we often find, people come up with some pretty sophisticated ideas with the models, even though they're kind of sketchy, as shown here. But I think a lot of people saw that, having some kind of a development along the frontage, which might include some mixed use, makes sense on a site like this, which has existing parking and buildings along Main Street, and then having a new access road that comes up behind and provides either a cluster of buildings at one end or a large town green with the buildings arranged around the side, could create a nice setting for new homes, as well as providing, the requisite number of new homes, possibly the 87 units. So that was the two groups that worked on the Knapp property. Then we had the Dunn property. Again, people sort of picked up on the idea of you could have sort of a limited amount of development on the Main Street side, which could include some mixed use, could be sort of arranged in a way that would fit with the neighboring buildings, where you have these sort of large federal style unit on the street, some wings going in the back, and then to take advantage of the deep property by having larger buildings in the back where you wouldn't see them from Main Street. And so ideas for, protecting the knoll on the Dunn property and arranging new multifamily on I guess that's the east side, creating a cluster on the knoll and preserving more of the land in the back. Or again, here in this one, preserving the land in the back as open space and sort of clustering a series of houses around the knoll. And then on the
Quick question about that.
sure.
That shows up on the U map, the downtown map. Is it just zoned? Is there anything particular different about the zoning there on the Dunn property? And also, were there any limitations because so much earth was removed from that property back to cap the landfill on Georgetown Road?
Oh, is that right?
I almost remember that there was conversation. I don't know whether there's anything on record about what could or couldn't happen to that parcel from I guess it would show up in a title search, but just a realtor question.
Yeah, those are good. I'm not quite sure if does this include part of the business zone, Sue? Or is it just residential?
There is a little corner of the parcel is within the downtown in the in the,
But, you know, I mean, this would also be an opportunity to talk about maybe changing that as well, if the front part of this, since it's been sort of a commercial use for years, agricultural use, it might fly at a public meeting to switch that over and then get that mixed use in front.
I think in general, what we heard, you know, both at the sort of listening workshop and then the subsequent design workshop, is people had a lot of concern about how higher density multifamily might change the character of the town. But very quickly picked up on the fact that there are quite a lot of large buildings. There's a fair amount of mixed use already on Main Street. And if it was carefully designed and stretching out to the rear, you could do it without changing that character too much. And then there's an opportunity to actually expand on the mixed use, as you say. In terms of the limitations on soil capacity, probably any of these, I think for that reason, might be more constrained for large single family lots than they are for multifamily. Because in this case, you almost certainly would have a single wastewater system, which would be located in presumably the part of the site with the best soils and the best infiltration rates and so on. So unless they ruin the whole site for infiltration, I imagine there would be a workaround for that.
Yeah.
But it's a really good question that we should try to find out more information.
Yeah, was that so removed from the front of the property? Is that why the big bank is there?
Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Right. I was wondering that.
You can see on the topo there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's much steeper. They just took a chunk out of that knoll.
Right.
So, and then for the Mullen property, I think everyone sort of saw intuitively that the site breaks down into sort of an eastern and western clusters with the wetland coming up in between. And so and then those sort of lend themselves to sort of two neighborhood groups with open space in the middle. Of course, you'd have to work in the parking, either within the center around the outside or tucked within the houses. But there's a fair amount of room there, again, to put fairly large buildings back in the woods where you wouldn't see them from anywhere, probably, if it was done carefully. So some of the groups focused on, I think these are units that are 2-3 homes in a structure, 2 to 4 probably. These are the larger apartments that I think had 20 units in them. So again, I think people got a pretty good tangible feel for, if you use the larger building styles, you don't need so many of them.
And these little models are sort of to scale.
Yeah, all the models we brought were to scale and represented actual building types that we had illustrated. And
yeah. I'm real sorry that I was sick that night and couldn't attend, but I had friends who went and got a lot out of it. So
yeah, so we had another station where we asked people to sort of comment on the typical building types, ranging from duplexes with 2 units together. These are sort of what is often called a stacked flat, but they're basically apartments that are on top of each other with a central hallway. And then there's the so-called manor house, which is basically a traditional townhouse with shared walls between units that might be 2 to 2.5 stories. But then you share your side wall with another unit. And one of the interesting things that's happened in recent years is people are really experimenting with taking the traditional sort of townhouse condo as a building type and redesigning it to look more like, either some kind of an estate building covered with shingles, or an extended farm building of some kind, or just a big single family house, which really seems to resonate with people as long as you don't have a giant parking lot out front. And that tends to lower the appreciation somewhat. So you can see here, people really, the green dots, as you know, represented a sort of favorable impression. So people really like the townhouse is arranged as what looks like a large extended farm complex with a lot of landscaping. They didn't like the ones that looked more suburban, I think. And even adding a few big trees seemed to have a big benefit compared to something that doesn't have any trees. And
Yeah,
then with the apartments, these are sort of the more traditional apartment with a central corridor and apartments on each side, on each floor. So these could be 20, 30 units. And so we were looking for examples of ones, again, that had been done in a style that feels more like a town like West Newbury with porches and gables and so on. Of course, the more gables and porches you add, the less affordable it becomes. And so there's that question as well. So some of the questions I wanted to ask you tonight is sort of which of these areas should we be exploring further as we move forward? Should we continue to look at all three of these sites? Should any of them be eliminated, and should we look more at other ones?
Is there an issue with keeping all three in play, since all the sites, I think it's unlikely that you would ever get 80 units on one site. With septic, you're probably going to get 30 to 35, maybe 40 units.
Right.
So wouldn't we be better off to have all three and narrowing it down?
Yeah, if I may jump in here, my question is, do we want to meet the letter of the law and get out of this, or do we want to embrace the spirit of the thing? And if we want to meet the letter of the law and get out of this, then I think you just take one site, you meet the minimum standards, you just don't worry about actually, there being the possibility of having the 80 units. I think a better approach is to keep all sites in play. And I also like the idea of the back end of, I forget what Main Street properties are that could be added in.
Church.
Yeah, it makes sense to me to have that whole bit.
Or something on Prospect.
No,
It was
done one. It's the property that's adjacent, that has a single house on Main Street, but opens way up in the back. And I think it was mentioned Nathan Dennis's property.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about Dunn. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking
Yes.
about.
Yeah, I can't read that. Was it 331 Main?
331 and 347. I think it kind of makes sense to, because then you've got a big block there.
Yes.
Well, and I might add that the person I heard that came up with that, it was Brad Boucher, and because his property abuts that as well, and he was saying, well, I might lop that off. He joked about his kids getting older and looking at college. So
I think Mr. Baker, Rich Baker was interested in that too.
there were several. Yes,
there were some interesting bedfellows at the meeting. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And just before I finish up my thought here, I think that actually, I think all these three here make sense. The Mullen property makes sense. I might leave the Knapp one out of it, just because it's further away from the downtown area. So I'm okay with leaving it in consideration, but if I were going to drop a parcel, that would be the one that I would drop. And that's just my gut reaction here.
I agree with what Brian and Ray have said. I note that Knapp is being actively listed on the market again. So, that family may want to do something relatively soon. So we'll just have to see what happens with that one.
Yeah, I think I hear you, Ray. I just think, we have limited parcels. At this point, I'd rather keep them all in play.
I have no problem keeping all of them in play.
And here we're here in mid-July. this could change in December or January, you
Yeah.
know. If,
Oh,
if
and then
that parcel was sold.
The biggest challenge, I think, in the Mullen property is going to be access. Because that one skinny route out to Main Street doesn't work that well.
No,
Oh,
it's
When
only-
you consider turning radii and
No, the access was on Church Street. The
No,
primary
there's access from Church and there's also
And-
potential access from Prospect. And I think you
Yes,
need them
yes.
both.
Oh, I don't see I didn't see it has frontage on Prospect.
It does.
Doesn't have
There's an
frontage, but
adja-
there's a parcel R13-19.
Okay,
That doesn't have a house on it.
is it a buildable lot?
I don't think it is a
Well, it
buildable
doesn't need to
lot.
be if it's for access, yeah.
And I think it does, that could work. Although
Yeah,
I'm sure the
Yeah.
people on Prospect wouldn't like it. I think that,
that's what
whatever
killed the
development you have
They-
there would work much better.
They didn't like it before. And
They
the Main Street access was always going to be problematic. There's some legal issues and whatnot.
Yeah,
I
I think you
Yeah.
save that for a pedestrian trail.
Yes. I
Right, just
agree.
for kids to walk out and have a school bus stop there, you know?
Yes,
Yeah,
Buses down the street, they're right across from the other
bus-
development.
yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that I think makes Mullen two things may make it difficult. One is that frankly, it has way more abutters who would be affected. So I think that opposition potential is greater there. I'll just say that. There seemed to be some question about the fact that it's town-owned land, and would the state look favorably on that? I didn't quite understand why, but I guess it's because town meeting has the ability to say, no, we, the town, don't want to use it for that. So that would make a real mess.
Yeah, our understanding is because it was identified in the housing plan,
It would be okay.
the state would accept it, but they need to see a realistic process for the town moving forward with housing, selling the property,
Right.
etc.
Right, I think there may be an additional bump in the road with that. But I think if we keep them all in play, then we are more inoculated against all these various things that might happen, you know? One of them we already own, one's on the market, one isn't on the market at all. So we don't know what's gonna happen with Dunn or Nat, sure.
and if we add the
Dennis, yeah.
the back
Mhm.
of those two parcels, R10-42 and 37, if it matters.
Mhm.
Yeah, 331 Main and 347 Main.
Mhm.
I just think what you're doing is you're creating sort of a coherent block that I think makes sense. I also think it would be reassuring to anybody at the state. So,
Mhm.
That actually, yes. When you look at that map, boy, that really makes sense. You know, put
Yeah,
the Dennis parcel together with the Dunn, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess the obvious impact of enlarging and combining and enlarging the parcels is that you increase the development potential. And if you zone that all as part of the district at 15 units an acre, suddenly the main thing that's limiting it then is the wastewater treatment.
Mhm.
But that, if you're really interested in promoting housing, you know, having a larger parcel is much more likely to successfully support wastewater treatment at a scale that could really pay for or be affordable for a developer. But it probably means, you know, 200 units.
no.
I still
Well-
don't see how, there are slopes on that Dennis parcel. I respectfully, I don't think you'd be getting that number of units there, Peter.
well, yeah, and
We don't
Yeah,
want to do 200 units.
No, I don't think you want to do that.
Well, it's one of the things we've been batting around is how to, because the wastewater is really a key issue. Because as you know,
Right.
you know, if you keep it under 10,000 gallons a day, It's a much more affordable system, but that basically means you're limited to 90 bedrooms, which is why most of the developments are 35 to 45.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you've got these 3 parcels zoned this way, and you've got Mullen across the street zoned this way, then you have enough acreage there that you could have several smaller developments and get wastewater dealt with without a big plant.
That seems very logical to me.
Because I know that if it goes to town meeting that, you know, somebody's going to build a 200 unit complex, then they're going to be pitchforks and torches coming out of the parking lot.
Community land trusts have been on my agenda for the last couple of months, where the town owns the land and the occupants of the houses own them, or an entity owns them. And both of the groups that I've been talking to are more in the nonprofit rather than a for-profit builder. But hope springs eternal that we could find developers who could work with the town, and something like the Community Land Trust might work here. I went to a consortium in Andover, and the Affordable Housing Trust Committee has had several very interesting speakers. I should make notes of some of them about ways that the towns are working. And we're talking about building 13 units in the history of this group. I mean, there are smaller scale projects. We have to identify this, but and I agree, Ray, that we want to be authentic about this. We're not just doing it to meet what the state requires, but we truly need to do some affordable housing. And although, you know, these could sell for big, huge bucks, I feel like the tide has turned, and that any proposals we come up with that can allow families of people who are already in town and, you know, to increase the housing for the people who really want to live here. So anyway, that's my soapbox.
And I think Deb, that's how it's going to be successful at town meeting.
Good.
You mean including affordable housing?
Absolutely. And far smaller numbers.
Right.
We're-
Yeah,
we-
no, I'm not suggesting that 200 units would be a good thing necessarily, but that there is this economic equation that the developers are going to look at. And if they have the ability to build 200 units, and the only way they can build anything above 45 units on a single site is to build a large shared wastewater treatment plant, that's basically their only option. So and as I say, I agree, Ray, the logical thing to me is to build 3 smaller projects, which would distribute the traffic impacts, would make it easier to fit into the landscape, into the neighborhood, and also provide a lot of open space on all 3 of these sites.
And, you know,
If you can make that, if the developers can make that work economically.
and we know they can, because we've got 3 developments right now that are like that. You know, there's Ocean Meadow, and there's Follinsby and Daly's.
So there's, I think, you know, especially after seeing the modeling exercise and looking at this ourselves, there's plenty of room on each of these sites for that level of development. So I guess the question is, why do you need then to expand this site to include the neighboring properties? What's the goal there? Just to have a more coherent final result?
I think so, and also allow the possibility of, you know, multiple smaller complexes. And I don't know, it just appeals to my sense of a plan that could work.
I mean, isn't there some advantage to having a zone that includes 3 parcels, which remain as individual parcels, and then the sort of market can speak about what's actually available and what actually perks.
Yep.
Right.
And then and the free market gets involved with what's the property worth to the owner? And, make me an offer kind of a thing.
Right, or maybe they buy all of one and part of another. Then they've got it. It puts some flexibility in the hands of the developers, I think.
Yeah.
And if the NAP property moves away,
Right.
now we've got an expanded Dunn, and Mullen is basically the game in town.
Yeah. I don't know that any of these 3 has been perked particularly extensively. Now, what if we only do Dunn and it actually doesn't perk? I don't know.
Oh, there,
Yeah,
yeah.
or somebody has a great plan for it, but what they're gonna need 331 Main Street for some reason,
Mhm.
and I mean, it makes so much sense to me, somebody just, sell off the back parcel. Right?
No, you can't do that.
Well, keep the house, keep the house up on Main Street, right? Yeah, I could see that as being attractive to a potential.
Right, to the adjacent, to combine with the adjacent.
Right.
Yeah, and then you work through 317 Main Street and you take as much of 331 Main as you need to get your spreadsheet to work and your profit margins up there, and yeah. Same thing with 347 Main.
Somehow the adjacency to the daily development and the open space there seems to have a good, kind of a nice fit a little bit too. As far as a district that's
Yeah,
similarly developed, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's the multifamily units that you're looking at right there in the corner of the property, huh?
Right.
Yep. And then you've also got the possibility of these trails that are way off the road that kids can bike to the ball fields and all that kind of stuff, because those trails are already set up on
Yeah, we
the
used
other
to,
property.
the hunt used to ride across there. There were good horse trails in there.
And it all connects up with our thriving downtown.
There you go.
Mhm.
All right, other questions? Should neighboring properties be included? Well, yes, I guess we covered that.
Covered that.
And then,
I have one other that I hesitate to mention, but I just wondered what its actual status is. The properties that belong to the Society of St. John the Evangelist, the northeast corner of town,
mhm.
it just shows as gray on the map, and I'm wondering what protects that from being a site that we should consider rezoning.
Church owns it.
We did look at that in our visit to the town, a beautiful property.
Not just the church and the hall.
Right,
but
no, we drove into the
Emery Lane. Yeah.
whole thing, yeah. And I think that the conclusion is it's pretty unlikely that there would be a change in use there. And the state probably wouldn't buy that as a potential site. Plus, it just doesn't seem, because we have other sites that are vacant and have good access to Main Street and they're closer to the town center, so that these probably make more sense.
Thank
But
you.
I guess it's up to the town. So one of the questions I was wondering is, we looked at different building types. Do you as a board think that those larger apartment buildings are appropriate? Should we focus on one or the other, or a mix of all of them? Just wanted to see if you had any opinions about that.
My opinion is that those green dots are your best indication of what's going to go. I think that was a good exercise, and that tells you how people feel better than anything else.
Yeah, I don't think people want to see the 30-unit apartment buildings, certainly from Main Street.
Especially with a big asphalt parking lot in front.
And I'm just uncomfortable thinking that that's the best solution for the town. You know, I think the units that might have 6 to 12 clustered around or whatever may be a better fit for our town than a mega structure. But that's my personal opinion.
The only other mega structure like that I can really think of in town is the Page School. And that's, you know, the subject of its own study right now. And, you know, who knows? Maybe determined that that would be a great housing site in the future. And there it is with its multi-stories and big
Yeah.
parking areas. But we don't have a single other building in town that rivals that for size, do we?
No, and then you also tap into, when I teach about residential aesthetics and what human beings find attractive and whatnot, there's that whole bit about history and growing up with something. You know, the Eiffel Tower is considered ugly at first, and now it's considered gorgeous, right? The whole town is used to Page School.
Exactly, yeah.
And so can accept it, whatever its use is.
Yeah, that's kind of implicit in what I was saying, but to introduce a new building like that would not, it's not an animal.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, I mean, I suppose there would be a way you could do it and make the numbers work, but I doubt it, because I think you'd have to go for some sort of a, you know, old feel to it. You know, yeah, you'd build a new building, but with brick and all that, you might be able to make it go, but.
Seemed like there was interest in having a variety of sizes of buildings. It was, so they weren't all the same looking structure all around. So you might have the 4 unit, you might have the 8 to 10 unit around a green. And with the parking behind, that seemed to be pretty popular concept. I think Ray was just mentioning that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned at the workshop, we're seeing more and more of the kind of mixed density village
Right.
style developments. And they work particularly well where you're trying to get a percentage to be affordable, because you can put a small apartment with some townhouses, some duplexes, and even some single family cottages and whatnot. And there's a lot of choices, and it also looks good because it feels more like a traditional town where you did have a mix of styles and building types.
Right. Looks
Yeah,
like
and you
that.
know, we do have this thing in New England where a lot of, you know, the first house that was built was rather small, and then a barn was built out back that was connected, and then a larger house was built up front, and you end up with that. And one of your depictions was of a modern structure that had that feel to it, and that got a lot of green dots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was the only one that had only green dots. And part of that was that it was different colors. Each piece was a different color.
Right?
Yeah, but again, there's a tradition there, and I bet you a lot of people are putting a green dot up there without being able to actually identify why.
Right.
Yeah.
But the ones that really were big fails were the ones where it was a sort of a giant unified mass, you know, the massing was sort of repetitive, like the old squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube look.
Or the, you know, big ski lodge kind of complexes, that sort of thing.
Right.
I think the other, it's not necessarily a type, but there was some interest in keeping like the existing colonial that is on the site and on Main Street. And maybe that's a, you know, it's got a coffee shop in it or something like that, maybe mixed use. I know that can get more expensive than sometimes than constructing a new building, but that keeps that nice feel that people are used to.
Mhm. When I'm aware of your time, I don't want to take too much of your evening, but this was another question, which I think we already discussed, which is, do we do the minimum? Or do we really look at this as an opportunity to promote some more diverse housing? Maybe the only opportunity we're going to have for a while. And I think you've answered what I've heard is we really want to do the right thing to the extent we can get it past town meeting. And look at these as an opportunity to expand those opportunities for housing.
Yeah, I think that feels like the right approach, and you know, I think we should try that. If it doesn't work, then maybe we have to circle back to the following fall town meeting or whatever and revise a plan. But I'd like to do more than just the minimum.
I
Well,
also, excuse me, I also agree, and I don't think anybody really wants to get in a situation where the state comes back to us and says, nah, this ain't good enough. Because we're just trying to just get by with the minimum, and it gets into this long dragged out thing.
I do think politically, small p politically, there will be people in town meeting who will defend the idea of doing the minimum just to, you know, get past this. So I
Yes.
think it's not just up to us to make a sort of a impassioned plea about making more diverse housing choices, but I think we need to find a way that this zoning proposal supports that, you know, that it makes this lofty notion real and doable so that people can get excited about it.
Yeah, and without going overboard.
Yeah. But people have to sign up for a number of reasons. Not
Well, not the least of which is that over the last 2 years, we funded to create and now fund an affordable housing trust. And I take my role on that board pretty seriously. When somebody puts a trust on you to do it, you should do it.
right. Although so then the affordability component of what we propose is actually another chapter in this, I
That's
think.
real important to me.
No, I know it is, but
Yeah.
we're gonna have to thread that needle pretty carefully too.
Thank you for that advice.
So the last question is, we've sort of been talking about this around the edges, but does combining the community housing zoning with a potential 40R district make sense? This is something I think has been raised a couple of times. We've gone and talked to Bill Raelt, who manages the 40R program for the state, because that program is, as you know, was really designed, it was kind of the precursor of this one, but it was more voluntary and incentive based. So if you zone land for multifamily housing, basically the state will provide an initial incentive payment. And then if you actually issue building permits for each unit, you get like $3,000. And then there's further payments if there's impacts on the schools, they'll help pay for the school program. And then you have favorable consideration for state grants and so on. But their intention was really to promote redevelopment of town centers and places close to transit. And so the question was, is this enough of a town center to qualify? And so we talked to Bill Raelt, and he actually put this map together of talking about whether this could be considered a rural village, which at least 50% of the area needs to be substantially developed, and there's an elaborate process for defining what qualifies as substantially developed or underutilized land, because they don't want it to be greenfield development. They want it to be spurring more intense use of existing infrastructure and support of existing town centers. But it does seem like they would consider this to be an existing rural village, is how it's described in their rubric. And that would qualify as a suitable place. And then because these parcels are partly, at least within that substantially developed area of this existing village, then those parcels could be included.
So this suggests that both Mullen and Dunn, although they don't fall within the yellow, they would still be considered as, it would work.
Right, and you can, split off, you could take the front of either parcel or all of Dunn and part of Mullen and include it in the 40R district. And the advantage of the 40R, of course, is it sort of comes with a master plan that you would have to think more about how this whole thing fits together. It would set you up for grants to pay for shared wastewater and other infrastructure improvements if that's appropriate. And it also incorporates design guidelines. So it gives you more control over how the development is designed. You still have to, I think there's several different levels of density that are required under 40R, but you can go as low as 8 units an acre. And then there's 12 units an acre and 20. So somewhere in there, the 15 units an acre average, which is required by this other zoning that we're trying to institute, would fit into that.
You know, it's interesting, but I wonder if it's just a zoning change too far for us to contemplate at this juncture. You know, people are they'll just be falling asleep in the town meeting.
I don't know. Those incentive payments might wake them up, Brian.
Yeah.
Incentives only for the new development, right?
Yes, for the new one, yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, how would, if we say we were enthusiastic about pursuing 40R, how would it dovetail with the pretty tight timelines for this MBTA communities requirement?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Are cities and towns that already have 40R districts saying to the state, well, look, here it is. We have this. We're all done, right? Is that, you know, like Cambridge or Arlington or some of these other towns? Is that
I guess, yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. I mean, I think most of them, well, there's a mix of densities in the ones that have been enacted. But I mean, the process is pretty similar. You have to go to the state and get sort of initial approval to do a 40R, and then there's a process of adopting the zoning and the design guidelines. But I think it could be done concurrently. It's typically, you know, a 6-month process.
Okay.
I do think it certainly would require another project, another budget.
Sure,
It can't be done within the current one, but I also think that there's probably, you know, funds out there from the state that would allow us to move along that front.
Do you see other advantages generally, Sue, to having a 40R in addition?
You know, it's a great question. I think that knowing that it could be used for the parcel that the town owns really puts it well within our jurisdiction of, you know, having great control over it. And that's okay with the 40R district. But yeah, it's a good question.
Could this be something we would layer on after, you know, we pass, hopefully next spring? You know, could it be attacked at that point?
Well, but wouldn't that be, if you want to take advantage of the benefits of 40R, then how would you lock in that you wanted things to be done under that versus this, you know?
Yeah, and I think a 40R, your incentive payment is based on what you are allowing by the new 40R zoning that's above what's underlying zone. And if you already have an underlying zone that's 15 units an acre, then there really is no incentive, right? And there's no incentive that they would pay you for. I think the only way it would work would be a different parcel. That's my read. I don't know if Peter has a different read of it.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Mhm.
Well, obviously, we don't quite have enough information to understand it, but I think we can come back to the next meeting with hopefully a clearer idea of what the options are and what the advantages would be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sure, yeah.
And I would just say, Peter, the only thing that we didn't touch on in terms of an update, I just wanted to let the board know that we did meet with the water consultant at this point, and they know the sites that we're generally looking at, and they're going to come back. They're going to do some modeling and come back and tell us if one site is has any particular advantage over the other. So we will have that in advance of the August 15th deadline, our meeting.
Okay.
So anything else you'd like to tell me or ask me?
No, I think for me, I think that this was helpful. It kind of gave all of us a chance to talk about, our thoughts at the meeting and what we liked and some direction. I think you probably got a sense of where you need to be for the next update in later in August, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one more question about Dunn, in addition to, just delving into that issue about removing soil. Is that property, does it have either, is it either chapter land or have an agricultural preservation restriction on it? Is there anything special about it? I mean, it's sort of interesting that the downtown map that we were just looking at ends at the lot line behind the houses on Maple Street
Mhm.
and doesn't include that parcel. So I just wondered if it had any level of protection that we didn't discuss before.
Isn't it correct that we only have 2 APR parcels in town, Long Hill Orchard and the one down the end of Crane Neck? I might be wrong about that. But I thought it was.
I think that's correct.
It might be chapter land. I have no idea. There's a ton of that, but that should all be mapped somewhere.
Yeah.
The Long Hill,
That's an APR.
well, there's the land either side of Bailey's Lane, which is also APR, I think.
Oh, is it?
I think so, yeah.
I think so too.
Is
Yeah,
that
because I think Merrill sold it to APR land, Merrill Senior. Merrill
okay?
Junior lost it and it went to the guy across the river, and then now
Kimball,
it's
yeah.
gonna joust you.
And I almost think that the Unijeski parcel across the street from you had an APR on it that the Athertons put on it. No, that's
No.
got a
I don't
CR.
think any new APR has come into town since the 80s, but I don't know.
No, Atherton's, it's conserved. It's got a CR that Greenbelt holds, but it does not have an APR.
Well, and I can't remember if Fury's had a CR or an APR. Okay.
Yeah, all CRs, but that should be.
Does everybody here know what an APR is? Since we brought it up, agricultural protection restriction, and it was a program where the state would buy the development rights for a farm to keep it in agricultural land.
Yeah.
So this used to be down in Bailey's Lane here. I live on Bailey's Lane next to the library. Down Bailey's Lane, that used to be a dairy farm run by the Merrill family.
Mhm.
And then Long Hill. Those are the only 2 lots I know for sure APR.
I think there are others.
So do you know if the assessors, or it seems in this day and age that somebody ought to have a database that you can sort by APR, you can sort by.
Yes, they're all in the open space plan.
Yeah, okay, so we
They
can
have
easily.
them there. Yeah,
And I think it's on GIS.
yes, but I
Mapping.
don't think that these properties that we're talking about have any of those.
No, I don't think so either.
By the way, that was a great program. It's a shame that the state
Mhm.
stopped funding it.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
You can't put it on property now?
No,
The law is still there. There's just no funding for it.
no
Right.
money.
Wow.
All gone to private entities to take up that fight.
I think that's probably what the difference has been, is there's been a huge growth in private land trusts or nonprofit land trusts that have sort of taken that on.
By the way, Brian, I noticed that our guest CR has her hand up.
Right.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to be respectful and just wait. And I thank you, Sue, for letting me know it was okay to ask a question. So yes, I'm just a resident who's getting educated about what's happening. And I appreciate the thoughtful discussion about, multi-use property. And I do want to be a voice. I want to echo something, Ann, you said, which is, I love the idea of, really approaching this through the lens of how can we inspire people to get on board, both in preserving the beautiful character of our town, which I love so much, and at the same time building affordable housing. And looking at it, I appreciate you're all looking at it from. I love the fact that you did the workshop. I wish I had been there. And anyway, thank you for that, and I look forward to hearing more. I guess I just wanted to ask, when I looked at the different properties you were talking about, I wondered how much the idea of impacting the environment, the natural landscape. Like when I looked at Mullen, it looked like that was like a completely treed property. And one of the things that I love so much about this town is the wildlife. And I know everyone I talk to around town seems to love the wildlife. I live on Cherry Hill, and I've got like a virtual sanctuary here with the amount of animals we have. So I just wondered how much that plays a part. I mean, does it play a part in any way when you're choosing, different parcels, or is that really less important and more about just meeting certain state requirements? I don't mean that in a glib way. I mean, I'm really curious as to, how important that is.
I guess
Good question.
for our part, I mean, that was kind of the reason we started with the sort of town-wide mapping exercise. And that sort of led to the conclusion that probably the least impact on the environment is properties that are closest to Main Street, because you don't have to build long new roads. They're served by town water. And they tend to, I mean, the reason Main Street is there, I think, is because it was kind of the high ground in between the wetlands.
Right.
And so it sort of falls off on either side and it gets very lumpy. That's a technical term. Very lumpy landscape beyond that, as you've discovered, reviewing other projects, some of which have not worked for that reason. So I think, I'm sort of comfortable that probably the least environmental impact is to use, especially the lots that have already been disturbed. And like even the upper part of the Mullen property, it was open meadow 50 years ago and doesn't appear to have any particular
Great.
environmental sensitivity. So,
Although anytime you've got, regrowth of woodlands, you're creating an environment. I will say, CR, that this has always been something the planning board has been thinking of. We do have the open space development section of the bylaw that encourages concentration of homes so that we preserve the environment behind. And we've upset people in the past when we saved even a single tree here and there. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I should have said too, my name is Cheryl Richardson. I have CR for my professional, but yeah, thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah.
CR is kind of cool, I think.
It is.
Very
Thank you.
cool.
Thank you. Maybe I'll keep that.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, or
I think I'm
you good, Peter?
ready for my supper.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. Okay. This is very helpful, and
Very.
I thank you. And I know you're in touch a lot with Sue, and continue, and we'll, she'll let us know if there's some other interim questions that we need to deal with at our next early August meeting, and then we'll see you later in the month. Then.
All right. I look forward to it.
Thanks so much,
Okay.
Peter.
Peter,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Peter.
Appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Moving on, we have ADU discussion and next steps. So Sue, I'm going to let you take the lead on this.
Okay, let me find the ADU bylaw and I'll share my screen. When you last discussed it, really the only open item was, and I have it highlighted in here, was the thought about temporary absences, the ownership or the not the ownership, but the occupancy discussion. So let me share my screen.
I don't think I would call it the only question. I think it's a really thorny question.
There, can you see that? Or does it need to be enlarged or
A little larger there.
Yeah,
see if
Yeah,
I can
maybe I
remember
can.
Oh,
control?
there you go.
there you go,
Yeah.
single page.
Yep.
Very nice.
So that's what we're down to is that's the last
Well,
question.
Well,
Go slow.
We did have other feedback, but I don't know that it led us to make any changes.
no, I don't really think that it did. I think that we had talked about temporary absences, or you had talked about temporary absences.
There
I
it is.
think you were at the point where you thought
Mhm.
occupancy was a good idea, but allowing for some temporary absences. That is my recollection. And then I think what really was thought about or discussed to a great deal at the last meeting was the idea of rentals. But as you may know, the select board is thinking of repealing the short-term rental licensing general law bylaw, and then not allowing short-term rentals, not allowing it as allowed use. So ADUs would be no different than any other home,
So we wouldn't have to worry about the
and you
whole
wouldn't have to worry about it.
question.
And then they would think about it after whether anything is needed, or I think their current thinking is to delete the bylaw, which they feel is already flawed, the licensing bylaw, and then start over if needed.
Well, it is an interesting premise, rather than have one and then deal with the complaints. It sort of makes sense to not have one and
Yeah.
see if there are any complaints, you might solve a different problem.
Mm.
Might not even have to. Okay, so
So is this, we should come up with a number here tonight, Sue? That's what I'm hearing?
Well, I mean, you can start at the beginning and see if there's any other issues that you want, but I think that was kind of the outstanding question, is about occupancy. What were you going to require in terms of occupancy? And then the other discussion point is just what are next steps that you want to take? Do you want to have another listening session, or do you want to kind of go to a public hearing on this just in advance of town meeting? I did share with Brian, and we had a discussion today, that the town is thinking about doing a planning summit sometimes in September or early October in advance of town meeting, to kind of give folks an overview of the many different projects that are going on, and talk about the MBTA, talk about ADUs if you wish, talk about the Page School study, talk about the corridor study, and kind of have an in-person workshop, if you will, with stations where people could get information on all the different projects. That could be a next step for the ADU, and maybe the only other thing that you need other than a hearing. But I think that's the discussion that you might want to have. Do you want to do more, or do you want to just do something outreach through the paper to give people an idea of what you're doing, or do you want to have more listening sessions? What is the level of outreach that you want to do? Well,
I told Sue that I think we should just proceed. We had the one session, and I think we should have a public hearing, certainly perhaps late September. Happy to, try and participate in a town general effort, but another listening session, I think people kind of got the idea. They at least what we heard, they were on board. But, until you get to town meeting, you don't know for sure how
Right.
these things all will go. But I mean, I'm ready to move ahead with this and say we're there. But
That's my gut reaction.
I think so too. Before we go any farther down, why do we have, go up a little bit? Why is there additional language inserted into this floor area habitable space?
It's habitable space deal.
That's
We were
confusing me.
trying to put the same language in.
Yeah, but I think we just want to go straight floor area. I mean, with something this small, once you start excluding the bathrooms and the halls and the closets, the thing's going to end up being 1,800 square feet. You know what I mean? As there's only so small you can make those things, and so they represent a larger percentage of the total. Are you with me, Ray? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially because nowadays people watch a lot of HGTV.
Yeah.
And their bathrooms end up being, 200-300 square feet.
We just go straight up 900 and,
and go for the
and if you want anything, any relief, you seek the relief. But I don't want Sam to be subtracting 56 square feet here and 10 square feet there.
Yeah, and they can come to us for a special permit. And as I always say, 2 years, if this passes and we see, 3 or 4 applications of interest and it needs to be changed, so be it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
let's
think
keep it
keep it
fairly simple.
short and sweet.
Thank you for catching that. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be
No,
hard.
I don't know if Sam put that in or
Oh, he probably snuck that in
it
there.
was, it was put in at the last meeting. It was in a.
Yeah, I know.
I can't imagine that Sam would want to be doing that. So.
No, it's way too much multiplication and subtraction.
Wait.
Okay, right.
Where's the part about rental units? And I'm not clear on where you guys stand on that. And on where the town stands. The fact that the short-term rental prohibition is going to be removed, what does that leave? You can't do short-term rentals in town?
Yes, so right now you can do short-term rentals provided you have a license from the select board. But there's not great support for the general bylaw as it's written, and I think it's most people feel that it's fairly flawed, hard to enforce. So what they'd like to do is just prohibit short-term rentals, and that's anything less than 2 weeks.
But you're speaking that's what the select board is talking about.
Yes.
And
And
that
we do
would
not address it in this.
Nor should we.
But it would
Right.
obviously apply to anything because these are dwelling units in town.
So
But
what
so what we're looking at is the bottom there with the yellow languages. This is the only part that it goes on to the next page too, right? If we
Yes,
could all at once.
the same thing.
This, Deb, I think is what we're talking about. And our issue has nothing to do with short-term anything. It has only to do with owner occupancy being a
of
requirement.
one units? There's nothing else in here that says that it can't be used for short-term rentals?
We don't say that because the town's overarching bylaw would govern that.
Right.
If the town allows it, then it would be allowed. If the town doesn't allow it, it would not be allowed.
Here.
But it doesn't get mentioned in this document.
No, because you try to avoid referring to a similar thing in different bylaws in case one changes, it messes up the other one. You're subordinate to that.
Yeah, and when it comes to this highlighted language, I don't think it needs to be in either of these places, as long as we have a section that talks about temporary absences.
So you might make that letter D.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now it says per number, right?
Right.
Per hashtag stuff. Yeah, we just need the hashtag thing, and then you can delete this
Right.
text from these sections.
Make it so the first one would be the fact that the owner was going to occupy one.
Yeah,
Second fact would be that when you sell it, the new owner has to take a similar action.
yep,
That has to do with preserving the sort of existence of the unit and the fact that one or the other. Okay. So the accessory dwelling unit,
So I'm sorry,
How
I
does-
just want to
how
make
does-
sure I understand. So would you allow for a temporary absence of the owner? Like if someone wanted to.
yeah.
go to-
I think that's what we talked about and sort of
Yes.
And where
agreed.
does that show up?
2
And-
years.
but what about my temporary absence when I do my sabbatical and go teach at the University of Salamanca? The town isn't
Exactly.
going to get involved with what I do with my house while I'm gone.
No,
Right.
but we talked about there, I think there'd be like a subsection D here, temporary absences.
Oh, okay.
And being that
But we do want to
It-
control that.
the owner,
What?
the owner doesn't have to occupy. Let's see, the owner of the principal dwelling, they will occupy one of the dwelling units as their primary resident. Owners are allowed to be absent from their primary residence for a period of 6 months in every year, or
Yeah,
That's
let's do it right. But why don't we do it right there with B?
Yeah. Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I wouldn't make it a new letter because then C is sort of a new topic. The sale that's a different matter, right? You would just extend B, add it to the language of B. Is that right?
Oh, I would have it as a separate thing, but it works either way, I think.
I think if I were going to do that, I would make it C just because it kind of flows from B.
Yeah,
That's a detail. But what should it be? What should it say? 6 months? I mean, what about people that go to Florida for the winter?
exactly.
Better
That's
to have their
the,
house
that's the
sitting
idea.
empty, or is it better to have someone have the chance to rent it? I think
They should. It's the classic winter rental. What's wrong with that?
exactly. And there are
Yeah, but
those in town already.
that's fine. We're not saying that you can't rent it out. We're just saying that, the idea here is that the owner isn't permanently away, even though they call it their primary residence.
So you know what? The owner of the this doesn't quite make sense. The owner of the principal dwelling is the owner of both units,
Right.
right? So
And
it's
could live in either
it's
one.
just an owner.
Yeah, it should yeah, I agree. The owner, we shouldn't say of the principal dwelling.
I don't think we should. There's one owner who happens to own a big
Yeah.
and a little setup, right?
Yeah, so the owner must submit that language is fine.
Mhm.
The owner must submit saying that they will occupy one of the dwelling units,
There you go.
right? Temporary absence, the owner,
May be absent.
may be
for-
absent for a period of X of X.
Right.
Is it 6 months enough or,
I don't think so.
Remember, we had this summarized in the spreadsheet, and there were a bunch of different options there, and I think we kind of arrived at it.
What's the model say? Let's go to Tim's and Brian's fallback, the
The
model.
Bryan principle.
Mhm.
I don't think
The
they
Murphy
had
principle.
I don't think they had temporary absences.
Really? I
Yeah.
thought they did.
no, I think we would have filled it in. Maybe other towns had their
Let me
thing.
look though.
Well, okay, yes. Well, let's look at other towns then, because Sam had said, he gave a horrible example that was from Newbury when the owner
Right.
was gone all the time, remember?
Yeah, it became a drug house or something.
So
Yeah.
the state model says for bona fide, the temporary absences.
Yeah, there.
Doesn't say what it is.
Drive a
Um,
truck through that, yeah.
The ARP model says you shouldn't even have a owner occupancy requirement for primary residence.
Hardcore, okay.
And then Lexington is the one that came up with it
Temporary absence.
um,
Oh, less than 2 years, wow.
for at least
Wow.
2 years prior to between and any period less than 2 years, and you may rent it.
Yeah, that was the number stuck in my head too.
I could go for 1 year maybe, but I'm not sure I'd jump to 2 years.
Well, less than 2 years. I see, can rent the owner.
So if I'm gonna be gone for a year and a half,
What do you
that's
do?
less than 2 years and I can rent it out.
Yes,
Yes.
If I'm gonna be gone for 1 month, I can rent it out.
yes, because it's less than 2 years.
Yeah. So if you're gonna use that language, I don't know, 2 years seems like a lot.
Does seem like a lot.
Go and just try a year.
Let's try a year. I think we are gonna need feedback from people on this.
So the owner may be absent for a period of,
Period. 1 year.
I like less than 2 years.
Ah,
Do you have any examples? I need some good examples.
yeah, but you can't just say 1 year, you have to say 1 year. How,
Yeah, then tomorrow the new year starts and I'm still absent, right? Yeah.
right.
How did they handle that? Oh,
It's
2
gonna,
years.
it's
Shall
unenforceable.
be resident, there it was, it shall be resident on, so it's 2 years off, 2 years on.
Right, prior to and in between. We could just throw all that Lexington language in there and see what people think in the public hearing. I don't mean to sound that as casual. Casual as it sounds, but I mean, we have to start with something concrete. The hashtags, we're just not cutting it.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea and just making it,
Make it
1
something,
year.
get some
Let's
feedback.
put it in there and we'll circulate this again, and I'd like to talk about it again at August 1st.
Yeah,
You know, just let's see if we sleep on it for 2 weeks.
well, and
Okay,
it's
so
on
this-
it's on
so
the
this-
agenda. We may attract some folks.
Yep.
Talk about
That,
it.
I think that language works, and I would just propose that we copy it over just like it is, except that everywhere it says 2 years, we say 1 year.
That sounds perfect. I'm having trouble with the formatting, so I'm not going to do it right now, but I will do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you can circulate that back to us, Sue,
Yes.
and
Yes,
Good.
in short,
absolutely.
good order. And,
Oh, did we vote on that?
No, this is just drafting language.
we're getting close to the voting,
Right.
but let's, yeah.
Group writing.
No, listen,
And-
we've
and
made huge
just and
progress.
just so I know, Deb, where do you fall on this?
I just feel like if somebody went away for 2 years, they shouldn't feel like they were doing the wrong thing. That they could leave their house empty if they wanted to. They're sick. They're in an institution. They're I don't know. I just I don't, it's not a bone I need to chew. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's, yeah, this has always been sort of a sticking point.
Is it?
Since we
Okay.
started talking about this, we've sort of been kicking this can around.
You're okay with a year?
Is this a,
As the initial shot, it strikes me as a good place to go, but
Yeah,
It's okay.
and we're not gonna, we're gonna have a public hearing later in September for this. So,
I
you know,
know.
we
but
have a couple meetings. Excuse me.
Mhm.
And I know CR has a question. Just give us a minute.
may have some comments.
Any other board members' thoughts on this? Tim?
I think a year is fine, you know, I think the whole idea is it's supposed to be a primary residence, right? So
Right.
I wouldn't go longer than a year, actually. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we, CR, Cheryl, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I'm wondering, two things. Anne, you mentioned earlier something about getting feedback about this. Has the feedback been generally positive?
Yes, it has.
Oh, great, okay.
But there was some feedback, I think, even from some select board members, and it mostly had to do with this.
Yes,
this-
okay.
What do you do if you're not there and the place becomes, we don't want entire sections of town to turn into multifamily rentals effectively,
Course, yeah. And the other thing I was wondering is, because I'm such a proponent of this just because of having elderly parents and also planning for my own care in the future. Wanting to have somebody on property to take care of my husband and I should need be. It used to be that the Facebook page for West Newbury seemed so active about things that were going on in town, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore as much. Where, is the primary place that you hold a discussion for this would be like in the listening sessions or the town meeting you talked about in September, where people, like, would you get enough people to come to talk about this? Or, are
That's the
there
huge
a whole
problem.
bunch of people that are against this that we don't know about that, need to be educated? Or
Yeah, my experience is that the law requires us to have a public hearing before we bring a bylaw to town meeting. And usually the public hearing is very poorly attended.
really?
And then usually what happens is that in town meeting, sometimes it surprises the hell out of you. It just goes through, nobody even brings up the slightest question.
Right.
And then other times somebody's got to be in their bonnet and, you spend an hour and a half arguing over, one little bit of language or the concept overall. So it's really hard to know.
And do you still do the thing at the town meetings where, I remember going to a town meeting once where people could stand up and talk about why they
Oh,
were.
yeah, that's town meeting form of government.
It is.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
And generally, I have to say, generally in town here, which is the only place I have any experience with town meeting, I've been very impressed with the dialogue that occurs. I mean,
Yeah. Me too.
people seem to raise good points. I've had my position changed more than once by something somebody stood up and said.
That's great. Well, and
I might add, I have heard, and maybe from Sue, I believe there were several inquiries already with Sam Jocelyn, the building commissioner, about this ADU bylaw and when things might happen. So that's anecdotal interest, but it's good.
Yes.
It's good.
Well, thank you. And, I said this before and I'll say it again, as a town resident who's now just getting more involved in what's going on. I am just really blown away at how thoughtful you all are. Like, I just feel really grateful. Like, I feel like our town is in good hands, and I just.
You know, we
Ah,
all
Flattery.
have
Oh
to,
my God. Oh,
we all have to take this ethics thing to be on the board. And so I feel like I'm obligated to confess to everybody that I gave Cheryl $100 earlier to say.
I was like, what was he gonna say? No, but really, thank you all so much. And again, Sue, as I said, if there's anything I can do to help you or to support you, or, with this whole ADU thing or anything really, I mean, I've got a long time construction background, and, if anything I can do to be of help, just let me.
Cheryl, joining
you.
town committees is a great place to start.
Okay.
And you might find something that you'd really like to be a part of, whether it's the, conservation related or housing related. We do it all.
Yes. Good.
What's your construction experience background?
Well, when I was so I'm 63 now, but when I was in my late 20s, I worked for a construction company, and I actually was a construction supervisor. We built 3,000 square foot residential homes, which were considered huge back then. This was back in the 80s. My husband and I have built a couple of homes ourselves. I've built 3 homes, and from the ground up. And contrary to what is most common, my husband does all the design and picking out of everything, and I handle all the construction part because of my experience. So land management, dealing with the guys in the field, which, is always a very interesting experience. And just really looking at how to build things that are aesthetically pleasing to people, and respectful of the land at the same time, because I'm a huge lover of animals and wildlife, and I'm the protector of our little hill here in Cherry Hill. So I'm, you know,
That's great. Well
Well,
done.
we'll find a good project for you, I'm sure.
Very good.
So we'll keep you in
I just,
mind.
I want to respond to Cheryl's comment about Facebook. So we have sort of historically decided that we're part of town government and that that's really not the ideal location for conversations like that, although the topics may get discussed there. So we've worked fairly hard to create a web presence. You know, the town has a pretty robust website, and I know Sue's working hard to have sort of a project page for all these things. So there'll be ADU information on the planning board portion of the website. And I think the exercise may be a little harder sell than Facebook, but to try to get people accustomed to going to see the town's website when they want information about what's going on in town.
yes.
So if you can spread the word that, gee, have you been to the website? They have some pretty good stuff there, might be a useful thing to do.
And you do. And I think the emails, I mean, this is why I'm here, because I started to get emails, you know, I don't know, a year ago. And that's really what did it for me. Like suddenly I just, you know, I realized, oh my God, there's so much going on that I am unaware of as a resident. And I have a responsibility to be aware of it and to be involved in some way. So
Here.
yeah, I appreciate that. So thank you. I'm going to leave you all. I'm sorry to
Okay.
take your time,
No
and
problem. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Cheryl.
your comments.
take good care.
Thanks. Tuning in.
Okay, good discussion. So we'll look for that draft, chat about it again, and we're awful close.
Yes.
Awful close. Okay, where are we here? We can move. Let's see. Ah, Sue, you're up again. Planners report.
Okay, let me get to that. I can
No, we've
share
already
it.
covered a lot of this, but
We have covered a lot of it, but I'll just put it up there so we can make sure. So I don't have to give a Housing Opportunities Initiative update because Peter did an excellent job on that. And I know you haven't had a chance to read all through it, but the notes that they provided for both of those were extensive, and I thought just really good if people really wanted to know what comments were made. They seem to all make it into those notes. So
Where are
those
these?
were just put up on the project webpage today as well.
And Sue sent them in.
And I sent them.
And I did have a chance to read quickly through it all, and I thought it was fantastic because it
Yeah.
reminded me of a lot. And then there were, of course, discussion items at tables where I wasn't. So
Yeah.
I hadn't heard all those comments. So it was good.
Yeah, so I was really happy to get those. The ADU bylaw, we've just covered. I just want to keep this in as a reminder that the non-conforming structures and uses bylaw that Sam would like to bring to fall town meeting. And I don't know if you all want to put that up at another, if you have more questions about it, or if you think that it's fairly straightforward. And if we just want to bundle that hearing with the ADU hearing when the fall time comes. So just want to keep
did we
that on the
see?
agenda.
Yeah, did we see what he was proposing at the last meeting?
We did.
We
Yeah.
did.
I don't have it up here tonight, but I can
No,
find it
that's
if you
okay.
want it.
We should probably take one more look at it before a public
Yeah, I was
hearing.
just going to suggest, again, August 1st, can we just
Yes,
try and knock that off? And, well, let's review it. We should knock it off, is not the right word, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Come on in.
The
I'm
housing,
inclined to try to package it together. That's a good idea. So
That's expensive to run those ads.
it is. The housing production plan, it's a slow moving, but moving project. We met on June 21st. We did talk about the priority development areas. And you may recall what Peter said, one of the reasons that the Mullen property would be considered an acceptable site by the state is because it was mentioned in the housing production plan. We talked about the priority development areas. each of the 3 sites that we've talked about for the MBTA are identified as that for this plan. Again, our next meeting will be in the fall, early fall. No, we're meeting in August. And someone from the Open Space Committee is going to be joining us. Graham said he will, but when he's not there, Patricia joins us. Let's see. The solar facility siting study, hope to have their draft report this month. The Page School assessment, I think within, it's going to be submitted by the end of December. We have the architects on board. I say we, the town has the architects on board. Again, there's good information on that project webpage. And the quarter transportation study is getting firmed up. That is one of the projects that the town really wants to kind of highlight at that fall town planning summit, if they do. Right now, the same group is focusing on the crossing at the Page School that's under design and is already at 25% design. And then in the fall, they're going to start outreach about the rest of the 5 miles and make recommendations for it. So that will have a good intersection with the sites that we do. And I will feed anything as soon as we get a concept plan for these sites, we'll share with that consultant so they'll be able to adjust or consider possible housing at any of those sites and what that might mean for roadway improvements. The short-term rental bylaw, this just shares what I've already told you, that they plan to repeal the existing one. And then there's just keeping the other bylaws under consideration. I did add one here. Well, we talked about the right to farm bylaw, but I just did want to share that I have also the other farm that's for sale, the Christmas tree farm.
Oh, yes.
I have had someone come and say, would events or agricultural related events, either farm to table, dinners, different things, would that be an allowed use? So I couldn't say that it would be, because they were like, they wanted to put a pro forma together to kind of figure out what they could do with the parcel if they purchased it. And I said, I really didn't know, it hadn't been tested. Is that an accessory use? Sam said he thought it might be. So just one of those things that's out there that may come up in the future as to redefine what accessory uses are for farm related properties.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I know a couple of Rowley in particular, I think, struggled with a farm, and they were really into the wedding function business.
Yes.
And
Doesn't-
growing a few tomatoes, but
Yeah, it doesn't seem accessory to farming.
Yeah.
Could somebody identify the parcels that are for
Oh,
sale?
Lovejoy's. It's
Lovejoy's,
Evergreen Farm.
So Lovejoy's is on the market?
Yes,
Yes.
it's listed now for
2 million.
2 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
And that's 40 acres?
I'm not sure, but you can find the listing online.
Probably more or
What's
less.
the address?
On Ash Street.
114 Ash.
And the other one that you're talking about
No.
is,
Only that one.
oh, well, Naps is for sale.
Yes.
Yeah.
1.5.
Again, how much?
I think it's
1.5.
1.5, but it's all in Zillow.
Yep. Well, I like to write it down. Thank you.
Yeah. Just if you want to just confirm. memory.
Yeah. I've read it over, but I just, prices change.
So it's 36 acres.
Lovejoy's?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hate to lose that one with
Mhm.
100 years of hunt trails across it. Well, I don't know if it's 100 years, but it's an
Yeah.
important thing. It's
My
nice.
understanding is that both of the applicants or both of the several people who had called me about it, both were interested in preserving the farmland or actively farming it. And one was, working with others to make sure that it would be preserved. So that's the good news.
Mhm.
I haven't been contacted by anybody that wanted to wholesale develop it.
Right. Yeah, the idea of a conservation or a farming buyer is taking hold pretty well too.
Yes, yeah.
And who owns Naps at this point?
Marshall family.
Yes.
Okay.
God, that dwelling was built in 1727.
Lovejoy?
Well, if you've been in it, you could believe it.
Yeah.
They had a big auction when they were clearing it out, and I don't think it's been touched since 1728. So
I missed the auction. I would have loved to have been in there. Yeah.
Oh, he had some great stuff, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
That kind of
That
does
is
it
so.
for my report. I think we covered most of it.
Excellent. Great.
And I
Appreciate
did
it.
last time when I put this under correspondence, but I just wanted to remind you the last time that Mr. The tree guy,
Rich and
Shannon.
yeah.
yes, was here, he mentioned that he had put together this guidance for protecting trees during construction, and asked if we would hand it out whenever we had, someone pull a permit that would be doing some construction. So he asked if I had shared it with you. I didn't know. I don't know that if I did. So
You did. You
here
did.
it is. Good.
And he made a presentation of it too. I think,
Okay.
one thing that you might do with it is to put it in whatever the pre-construction meeting file is.
That's a good idea.
Then it'll be part of what gets discussed there.
And then
Good.
not on here, but it just came in the last 2 days. You will be getting, actually, I think I got it today after I left, an application for a scenic road for 290 Middle Street. So that will, Middle Road?
Yeah, where's that? Well, anyway,
No, Middle Street. It's
Middle-
Gorman, isn't it?
Yes, Gorman.
oh,
So
okay.
my understanding, it's a single tree.
Yes.
I
think I
haven't
saw-
opened the application, but it will be, I think we'll be putting it on the August 15th
Okay.
meeting date.
It looked to me as if, as that driveway is being constructed, they might have misjudged a tree or two.
Mm.
Well,
I think
you know,
this is,
Sue told me
National
it
Grid
was-
is doing this,
It's
Oh,
a
are they?
phone pole.
putting up a pole.
Okay.
That's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have been done when,
At the
they were
time,
laying the whole thing out. It
Yeah.
would have been a lot easier, but
Well-
such is life.
you wait for National Grid to be ready.
Yeah, you missed the boat. That's why. Sorry, Tim.
No, that's Eversource. We're on the case.
Right,
I can't
Sorry.
explain National Grid's conduct.
Makes him feel good, actually.
Right.
Whoops.
Competition.
Okay. So we're into correspondence, I guess. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I didn't want to, I just
No,
have it
no.
up here. I'm just ready.
Yeah,
So we can
that's
look at
fine.
it.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's not
Yeah.
much. It's Haverhill for property in a commercial center, wanting to rezone it to residential commercial, to build a 14 residential.
There you go. Mixed
Haverhill.
use.
Yeah.
Hey,
Good.
And then
This
Newbury.
one.
Yep, this was for one on Plum Island.
Look at that name, Brian Buer.
Yes,
Mm.
old friends want to turn a
Oh,
store
yes.
into a house or get rid
Yep.
of the house.
So that's a new
Looking for relief. Yeah.
Newbury. Yep.
Change of
So
use.
those are the only two.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
That's not for a property they own in town here.
No,
it's-
no.
It's
No.
for 134 Northern Boulevard. Okay.
Yes.
The store, they want to make a house where the store is.
So she, I noticed on the agenda, it didn't indicate that there was that there were minutes, but she has,
Yeah, she sent them.
she sent the draft minutes for 6/6.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, she did.
Did everybody read them or
Yes.
Yeah,
I read them?
I was happy to read them.
Yeah. Are there any comments on the well, on any of the pages.
I think the only comment I had is a kind of a nudgy one, but that's would be typical for me, wouldn't it? At the very end where it talks about Ian, who I think was at our meeting, might even still be here. Hi, Ian. I think that maybe we need to describe, I think that was a meeting which Ian introduced himself and made a very nice presentation, and we said we'd love to have him, but he still had to go be appointed by the select board, right?
Yes.
Good point.
This
Yes.
doesn't accurately reflect the sequence of events, because I don't think he, or maybe we
Well,
can just
yeah.
say pending his appointment
Pending-
to the select board, Ian James will be serving or something, but just
Yeah.
to kind of make sure we got that in there. There we go.
Good.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nope.
No. All right. Move to approve the 6/6 23 minutes as amended.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Who goes first here? Ann?
Oh, Ann Vardine, hi.
Ray Cook, aye.
Tim Cronin, aye.
I don't vote.
Yeah, Brian Murphy, aye. That's right. You were not there.
That was there.
Okay. Administrative details, Sue?
I think the only, none that I can think of except putting you on alert to the scenic byway.
Yep. Okay,
Scenic
good.
byway.
Any placement of items to discuss, or we've already talked about what we're going to do on the 1st of August?
So we talked about the non-conforming. I have that one written down.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
ADU
Mr. Crow and the non-conforming
changes.
and
Yeah.
some Dodson and Flinker stuff too. Is he gonna questions? Can't remember.
Okay. And I did not have anything to bring up that was unanticipated. Anyone else have something they need to discuss, or?
I just want to say for the record, as the semester wound down, I worked like hell to get an extra 1,000 gallons of water tank into my system. So I'd be ready for a dry June.
Oh,
Perfect.
West Newbury Water Department, Bailey's Lane Division.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like getting a snow blower and then it doesn't snow all winter.
Yeah.
So you guys can blame me if it's a little too damp for you.
Well, if it doesn't
Not last
stop
year, right?
raining, yes, we'll. If you feel those pin cushions, we got the
Yeah,
voodoo doll.
yeah.
Yeah.
Get in line, get in line.
Can I just ask Sue about the town planning summit? It sounds ambitious, and I'm just wondering who's running it, and are you getting comfortably made a part of that, or?
Yeah, well, actually, we're just, it was kind of in the concept stage.
Okay.
I know that, Christine in particular, who is running, a number of projects, just feels like it's hard to ask people to come out again and again and again for all these projects. So the thought was that, if we had one larger meeting, people might come out. And also it gets people out of their silos. They might come because they're interested in the Page School, but they might learn about ADUs and other things. So I think it would primarily be myself and Christine that would put it together. I think most of the projects would be hers. So she would be, I think, carrying the bulk of the load, but I certainly have experience doing those. So I think it's worked well in other communities that I've done that with. So I do think it gives it lets people know that we're not planning in silos and that we're really sharing information just like Cheryl said, you know, there's a lot going on that people aren't aware of, and this is a
That's
good
right.
opportunity to kind of globally look at issues that impact folks on the planning stage. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. I just wondered how it was all gonna be managed, but it sounds like,
Yeah, no, I think
Fine.
Yeah.
we
no,
try
I-
not to make it too complicated. We will not be making model pieces or making
But
a
Oh,
grand
yeah.
presentation.
I like the sandwiches though. You can keep those.
Okay,
Were,
yeah.
were there about 40 people at that meeting?
That's what yes, and I
Yeah.
haven't gotten the sign-in sheet, and people don't always sign in, but yeah, and some people came and left. Not all were able to stay the entire time, but
Yeah.
yes,
Good.
Yeah, I heard good things about it.
good, yeah.
Well
And
done.
the fact that we
Sure
got 4
was.
people there, I think people will come to a planning summit. There are enough issues on the table that people will have opinions about.
Yeah.
And I hope favorable opinions. I think we got a lot of good initiatives going.
Yeah, and maybe Deb, I'll reach out to you or to someone else, whoever's involved mostly in the that preservation, the Sawmill Brook parcel. That might be
Oh,
one
good.
that we also want to keep people
Yeah.
appraised of where we are on that parcel.
Oh, you might include that as an agenda item for the next meeting, because there
Okay.
will be planning and fundraising efforts in place, and I'll update you.
Okay, great.
Good. Terrific.
Right.
Not so bad. Almost 9:15.
Oh, no,
Okay.
I got a lot done.
No, it was ambitious, but I think we did well.
Yeah,
Oh.
good meeting.
Okay, let's hope for a relatively dry next 2 weeks.
Oh.
Okay,
Nice.
Yes.
please, enough.
Yes, that would be
okay.
great.
All right.
Motion,
Everybody.
motion
Thank you
to
all.
adjourn.
Good to see you.
Second.
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Second,
Good night.
second, yes, vote.
Hey, Cook, I.
Favor.
Everybody,
Cronin, aye.
aye. Aye.
Deb Hamilton. Aye.